30 tons of steel rolling straight towards you, a machine gun in the hull, a cannon in the turret, and armor thick enough to shrug off anything a rifle could throw at it. For an infantryman in 1939, meeting a tank in the open came down to two options: run or die. The weapons soldiers were handed to fight back were so weak that some of them got men killed just for trying. 6 years later, everything had changed. By 1945, a 16-year-old boy could destroy that same 30-ton machine with a weapon that cost about $40 and took 10 minutes to learn. How that happened is the story of the 6 deadliest anti-tank weapons of the Second World War, ranked not by what they promised on paper, but by the damage they actually did. And the weapon at number 1 was never designed to kill tanks at all. When the war began, it was pointed at the sky. One thing first, because it explains this entire list. When an anti-tank round punches through armor, the danger is not just the hole. The impact sprays the crew compartment with fragments of their own tank. White-hot metal called spall, and if it touches the stored ammunition, the tank burns from the inside in seconds. Every weapon in this countdown was built to do exactly that. The ranking is simple: real results. Tanks destroyed, battles decided, and the fear a weapon put into the other side. It starts with the weapons that failed that test completely. Number 6. The anti-tank rifles, Panzerbüchse 39 and boys. Every army entered the war with the same idea. Give a soldier a really big rifle, and he can shoot a hole in a tank. The British built the boys anti-tank rifle. The Germans built the Panzerbüchse 39, a single-shot rifle longer than the man carrying it. And in 1939, the idea almost worked. The PZB-39 could punch through about 25 millimeters of armor at 300 meters, just enough against the thin-skinned tanks of the Polish campaign. Then armor grew, and the whole concept collapsed. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, more than 25,000 of these rifles went east and met the T-34, whose sloped hull simply shrugged the rounds off. The gunner absorbed a brutal, shoulder-bruising kick, gave away his position, and achieved nothing. Germany stopped production in November 1941 after fewer than 40,000 built. Britain's boys was obsolete by 1942, hated by every soldier who had to lug its 35 pounds. The anti-tank rifles earned their place on this list not for what they killed, but for what they proved. The age of shooting through tanks with bullets was over. Britain's replacement looked like it had been welded together from drain pipes, and cocking it defeated grown men. Yet in the mud of Burma, one wounded rifleman used it to do something entire armies thought impossible. Number 5. The Piat. The Piat, projector, infantry, anti-tank, might be the strangest weapon of the entire war. It was not a rocket launcher. It was a spigot mortar built around a massive steel spring, and cocking that spring meant standing on the weapon and hauling upward against roughly 200 pounds of resistance. Shorter soldiers physically could not do it, but the ugly duckling had teeth. Its 3-pound shaped charge bomb could penetrate around 100 millimeters of armor, enough to kill most German tanks at close range. And unlike a rocket launcher, the Piat had no backblast, no flash, no smoke trail pointing back at the shooter. A Piat team could fire from inside a closed room or an attic window, and the tank crew would never see where death came from. For German tankers in Normandy, every farmhouse became a threat. Then, on June 12, 1944, near Ningthaokong in Burma, Japanese tanks broke into the lines of the 7th Gurkha Rifles. Rifleman Ganju Lama took a Piat and crawled forward through the mud, with a broken left wrist and wounds in his right hand and leg. He closed to about 30 yards, knocked out one tank, then a second, then went after the escaping crews with grenades. He received the Victoria Cross. 1 month earlier, he had already destroyed 2 tanks and earned the military medal. 4 tanks in a single month, with a weapon most men could not even cock. The Americans looked at contraptions like this and chose a different path, the rocket. It would become one of the most famous weapons of the war. Its combat debut was a humiliation. Number 4. The bazooka. The M1 rocket launcher reached North Africa in November 1942, rushed to the front, with unreliable rockets and crews who had never fired one. After the fighting in Tunisia, an American general toured the front looking for success stories, and could not find a single soldier who could confirm the weapon had stopped even one enemy tank. Then the fixes arrived. In Sicily in 1943, the improved M1A1 knocked out 4 German medium tanks, and a Tiger one, killed by an almost impossible shot through the driver's vision slot. Soldiers began calling the bazooka the Shoulder 75 because it gave one man the hitting power of a 75mm artillery piece. Later versions punched through roughly 100mm of armor. It came with a horrific tax, firing one through a cone of flame and dust behind the shooter, a signature every German gunner within half a mile could read. The first shot had better count because the position was burned the moment the trigger was pulled, and the weapon's biggest compliment came from the enemy. The Germans captured examples, copied the design, enlarged it, and created the Panzerschreck. But at least a bazooka let a soldier fight from 80 yards away. The next weapon on this list required him to sprint through machine gun fire, climb onto a moving enemy tank, and touch it. The German Haftholladung was a 3-kilogram shaped charge mounted on 3 powerful horseshoe magnets. Slam it against a tank, pull the friction igniter, and the charge burned through up to 140mm of armor, enough to kill any Allied tank of the war, through any plate on its hull. It gave a single infantryman a guaranteed tank kill. The price was the delivery. A soldier had to leave cover under fire, run to the tank, climb close enough to press the magnets onto bare steel, pull an igniter with only seconds of delay, and then get clear of his own explosion, all while the tanks escorting infantry tried to shoot him off it. Soviet crews learned to travel in pairs and hose each other's hulls with machine gun fire. Many of the men who earned Germany's tank destruction badge with this weapon did not live to wear it. It was less a weapon than a dare. Here is the strange proof of how much it was feared. Zimmerit. The Germans were so convinced the Allies would copy their magnetic mine that they coated thousands of their own tanks in a ridged anti-magnetic paste. The Allies never copied it. Germany armored its tanks against a weapon only Germany was using. Eventually, German engineers did what should have been done from the start. They took the same shaped charge, put it on the end of a cheap disposable tube, and removed the suicide run entirely. The result became the most mass-produced anti-tank weapon in history, and the weapon they put in that 16-year-old's hands. The Panzerfaust was a single-shot, throwaway tube that cost around $40 to make. Germany built roughly 8 million of them between 1943 and 1945, more than every other weapon on this list combined. The late-model Panzerfaust 100 could penetrate 220 millimeters of armor. No tank on Earth carried that much. In open country, it underperformed. One Soviet frontline study from February 1945 counted 160 damaged tanks and assault guns. Only 2 hit by Panzerfausts. The range was the problem. 30 to 100 meters. One shot, no second chance. Cities changed everything. In Berlin in April 1945, every window, cellar, and pile of rubble could hide a man with a tube. Soviet accounts credit the Panzerfaust with the destruction of some 700 Red Army tanks in the Berlin fighting alone. Inside a hit tank, the shaped-charged jet did exactly what it was designed to do. And Soviet crews, veterans of 4 years of war, found themselves fearing children, because that is who was holding them. In the final months, Panzerfausts went to Hitler Youth boys and Volkssturm men in their 60s with 10 minutes of instruction. Boys of 14 were photographed defending bridges with them, and many died at those positions. It is one of the war's darkest images, the deadliest bargain in anti-tank history, handed to those who should never have fought at all. By kills per dollar, the Panzerfaust may be the most efficient tank killer ever built. So why is it not number 1? Because it burned bright for barely 18 months. The weapon at the top of this list killed tanks for 6 straight years on every front of the war. And Allied crews feared it so much they blamed it for losses it never caused. The 8.8-centimeter flak was designed in the 1930s to shoot down bombers. Reaching aircraft at altitude demands enormous muzzle velocity and a flat, fast trajectory, which, by pure accident, is exactly the recipe for a perfect tank killer. The world found out at Halfaya Pass in June 1941. British Matilda tanks, so heavily armored that standard German anti-tank guns bounced off them, rolled forward against 13 dug-in 88s of Rommel's 15th Panzer Division. The 88 could penetrate a Matilda from any angle at over 2,000 meters, far beyond the range at which the Matilda could reply. Around 100 of 190 British tanks were knocked out, and German gunners claimed a kill for roughly every 20 shells fired. British soldiers gave the place a new name, Hellfire Pass. That was one battle. In North Africa in 1941, just 2 German flak battalions destroyed 264 British tanks. And unlike the Panzerfaust, the 88 did this everywhere, the entire war. France in 1940, the desert, the Eastern Front, Normandy. Its descendants multiplied the toll. The PAK-43 anti-tank gun and the KWK-36 that armed the Tiger I. Counted as a family, nothing else in the war comes close to its total of destroyed tanks. For Allied crews, the nightmare was the imbalance. An 88 could kill them from a mile beyond their own gun's reach. A flash on the horizon, and then the hull rang like a struck bell as the round came through. The survivors carried the scars, and the fear outgrew the facts. By 1944, Allied tankers were reporting 88s every time any German gun fired at them. The weapon had become a ghost that haunted every hedgerow. So the deadliest anti-tank weapon of the Second World War was never meant to fight tanks at all. It began the war pointed at the sky and ended it as the one gun every Allied tanker knew by name. In 6 years, the balance of the battlefield turned upside down. By 1945, teenagers with $40 tubes were burning tanks in the streets of Berlin, and an anti-aircraft gun had destroyed more armor than any weapon ever built for the job. The tank was never beaten by a better tank. It was beaten by physics, desperation, and men, and boys, willing to stand close enough to use them. In 1939, a soldier facing a tank had 2 options, run or die. By 1945, it was the men inside the tanks who had learned to be afraid.